Welcome to another bookish video. Today I want to share all the books that I want to read this winter and like kind of share my winter TBR. It's a little ambitious because there are a lot of books that I want to read this winter, and it's definitely ambitious. I don't know if I'll be able to complete this TBR, but it's definitely worth a shot, worth trying to do. So I have everything separated out according to genre. So I guess let's just start with the classic genre, which is the first book that I want to read is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I've never read this before, and I'm very interested in reading this as I've heard it described as something that's kind of like sinister and very interesting, and just the whole tale of like the obsession with youth and eternal beauty and how that can lead down a dark and dangerous path when we become obsessed with that. So interested in reading this winter. The synopsis for this goes as: when Dorian Gray sees his stunning painted portrait, he is transfixed by its own reflection of his own beauty. He is also troubled by the knowledge that the image in the painting will remain forever handsome, while he himself grows older and less desirable. He professes that he would give his soul if only the painting would suffer the ravages of time and he were to remain forever young. As the old adage goes, be careful what you wish for. So this sounds really interesting, really intriguing, and can't wait to read it. The next classic that I want to read this winter is John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. I distinctly remember reading this in high school and just really enjoying it. As a matter of fact, we read a lot of Steinbeck in high school. I remember reading The Pearl and just various stories by him, and I actually really liked his writing style. I really liked the things that he had to say. I really liked the depth and complexity of his stories, and I want to revisit that again in my adulthood, as I have not read any books by John Steinbeck since high school. So I want to revisit that, and I thought this would be the perfect book to start with. So the synopsis says, at once naturalistic epic, captivity narrative, road novel, and transcendental gospel, Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath is perhaps the most American of American classics. Although it follows the movement of thousands of men and women and the transformation of an entire nation during the Dust Bowl migration of the 1930s, The Grapes of Wrath is also the story of one Oklahoma farm family, the Joads, who are driven off their homestead and forced to travel west to the promised land of California. From their trials and their repeated collisions against the hard realities of this new America, Steinbeck creates a drama that is intensely human, yet majestic in its scale and moral vision, tragic, but ultimately stirring in its insistence on human dignity. Cannot wait to dive into this. Okay, so the next genre that I have here is me dabbling into the romantasy genre. I think I've read a couple of romantasy books before. I can't really remember, but I've never really truly dove into it. So this winter I plan to do that. And one of the books that I'm going to read it really needs no introduction, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Now, this, again, it needs no introduction, it needs no preamble. This is a very popular, wide-known, highly acclaimed book that I haven't read. So I want to know what all the fuss is about. So I have made an effort to add this to my TBR for this winter so I can dive into this series and just, satiate my curiosity. So the synopsis for this is: when a 19-year-old huntress, Feyre, kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution. Dragged to a treacherous magical land she knows about only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal immortal fairies who once ruled her world. At least he's not a beast all the time. As she adapts to her new home, her feelings for the fairy, Tamlin transformed from icy hostility into a fiery passion that burns through every lie she's been told about the beautiful, dangerous world of the Fae. But something is not right in the fairylands. An ancient wicked shadow is growing, and Feyre must find a way to stop it or doom Tamlin and his world forever. So, yeah, looking forward to that. The second romantic book is another highly popular, highly acclaimed, well-known book, and that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Again, this is one of those books that really doesn't need an introduction because pretty much everyone and their mother has read it by this point, not counting me. But again, curiosity has gotten the better of me, and I want to know what it's all about. I want to laugh and kiki as well. And since I think the next installment, the third installment, Onyx Storm, is coming out late January, I want to really dive into the series, see if I can read both of these books so that I can purchase the third installment and just, you know, be part of that fandom. So the synopsis for this one goes as 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail was supposed to enter the Scribe Quadrant, living a quiet life among books and history. Now the commanding general, also known as her toughest Talon's mother, has ordered Violet to join the hundreds of candidates striving to become the elite of Navarre. I don't know if I said that right. Dragon riders. But when you're smaller than everyone else and your body is brittle, death is only a heartbeat away, because dragons don't bond to fragile humans. They incinerate them. With fewer dragons willing to bond than cadets, most would kill Violet to better their own chances of success. The rest would kill her just for being her mother's daughter, like Xaden Riorson, the most powerful and ruthless wing leader in the Riders Quadrant. She'll need every edge her wits can give her just to see the next sunrise. Yet with every day that passes, the war outside grows more deadly. The kingdom's protective wards are failing, and the death toll continues to rise. Even worse, Violet begins to suspect leadership is hiding a terrible secret. So, that sounds interesting, actually. The next genre that I have some books for is fantasy. Now, typically during the winter, I like to read a lot more fantasy, or I'm drawn to fantasy more, and I start more series because, I don't know, there's just something about the winter time that it just feels right for fantasy. And I think it has to do with a lot of fantasy books often are set in colder climates. I think that has something to do with it. But yeah, there are a few books in the fantasy genre that I want to dig into. One of the books that I'm really excited about reading is the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin. I have heard so many good things about this series and about this author, and I am truly excited to experience it for myself. So it says, "This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the Great Red Rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is a stillness, a land familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon and where there is no mercy." Does that not sound good? Oh my God. So I'm really excited to dig into this. The next fantasy, or this is actually, I got the whole series, is going to be the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I have not read this before, and I consider myself a fan of the fantasy genre, and I just find it bewildering that I have never read this trilogy as a huge fantasy fan. So I'm going to correct that wrong this winter, and I'm going to read through this trilogy and dig into Tolkien's world of hobbits and wizards and all the great stuff. So the first installment, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, it says, in a sleepy village in the Shire, a young hobbit is entrusted with an immense task. He must make a perilous journey across Middle Earth to the cracks of doom, there to destroy the ruling ring of power, the only thing that prevents the Dark Lord's evil dominion. So I think this is something that doesn't really need introduction. I think we've all seen the movies or watch some shows or whatever about this trilogy, but books are always better than adaptations in my opinion, so I can't wait to read it and dive into this world. The next fantasy book that I'm going to be reading, hopefully this winter, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is another book that I have heard amazing things about. People have said it's so life-changing, and it just is so thought-provoking and emotional, and I love books like that. So it says, France 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman named Adeline meets a dangerous stranger and makes a terrible mistake. It will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name. And suddenly, everything changes again. That sounds so intriguing. Can't wait to dive into that. The next fantasy book that I purchased was Heartless by Marissa Myers. So from what I know of this book, I know it does like not a retelling necessarily, but it kind of talks about the Queen of Hearts and basically shows her life or who she was before she became the evil Queen of Hearts. So we get a little bit of a backstory on her. And I love villain origin stories or backstories. I find them so intriguing and so interesting to see what things transpired in their life that made them become the people that they became. So this one is about Catherine, maybe one of the most desired girls in Wonderland and a favorite of the unmarried king, but her interests lie elsewhere. A talented baker, she wants to open a shop and create delectable pastries. But for her mother, such a goal is unthinkable for a woman who could be a queen. At a royal ball where Kath is expected to receive the king's marriage proposal, she meets handsome and mysterious Jest. For the first time, she feels the pull of true attraction. At the risk of offending the king and infuriating her parents, she and Jess enter into a secret courtship. Kath is determined to choose her own destiny, but in a land thriving with magic, madness, and monsters, fate has other plans. That sounds so good. So can't wait to dive into that. The next genre that I have is gonna be YA fantasy, and it's a lot. I don't know. I love YA fantasy. It's one of my favorite genres, I think. But yeah. So the first book I want to dive into is Holly Black's A Cruel Prince. I'm excited to start this series. It's very popular in book spaces in the bookish community, and I'm very interested in diving into this series. So it says Jude was 7 when her parents were murdered, and she and her 2 sisters were stolen away to live in the treacherous high court of Fairy. 10 years later, Jude wants nothing more than to belong there, but many of the Fae despise humans, especially Prince Cardan, the youngest and wickedest son of the High King. To win a place at the court, Jude must defy him and face the consequences. Sounds intriguing. The next book is House of Ashen Shadow by Leah Stone. So this book says, 17-year-old Fallon Bane was born with a curse. A single touch from another person will always cause her excruciating pain. Thus she has accepted that she will die without ever being kissed, without even hugging her own father. When her beloved father falls ill, she breaks into the magical gilded city to find a healer fae that can save him. When handsome Arion Madden agrees to help, everything she knows about herself and her curse changes. Because during her father's healing, Arion reaches out and touches her bare skin. She waits for the agony, but it never comes. For the first time, she imagines a new future for herself, but it is short-lived, because not only does Arion flee from her in disgust when he learns of her curse, he also reveals her existence to powerful fae who want to hurt her. Fallon is then swept away to a magical academy where she learns a terrifying truth about her family history and her dark magic. Her life and the future of fae everywhere hang in the balance, and all the while, Fallon is dreaming of being touched by Arion Madden one more time before she dies. So this is intriguing. The next book is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I've heard amazing things about this series, amazing things about this book, and I cannot wait to dive into this world. And I think that this book, this cover, is so flippin' beautiful. So after her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family, memories, or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like the perfect escape, until Bree witnesses a magical attack her very first night on campus. a flying demon feeding on human energies, a secret society of so-called legend-born students that hunt the creatures down, and a mysterious teenage mage who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memory of everything she saw. The mage's failure reveals Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory with a hidden connection. The night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows there's more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth, even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of their initiates. She recruits Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn, with his own grudge against the group, and their reluctant partnership pulls him deeper into the society's secrets and closer to each other. But when the Legendborn reveal themselves as the descendants of King Arthur's knights and explain that a magical war is coming, Bree has to decide how far she'll go for the truth and whether she should use her magic to take the society down or join the fight. This sounds very, very interesting, very intriguing, super excited to jump into this. Next book is another popular series that is beloved by the bookish community, and that is Caravel by Stephanie Garber. I want to read her other series. I think the something about a broken heart, the curse of a broken heart, or something. I can't remember what that series is, but I want to read that. But I have been told that this is the series to start with first before diving into that series. So here we are. It says, Scarlet Dragna has never left the tiny island where she and her sister Tella live with their powerful and cruel father. Now Scarlet's father has arranged a marriage for her, and Scarlet thinks her dreams of seeing Caravel, the faraway once-a-year performance where the audience participates in the show, are over. But this year, Scarlet's long-dreamt-of invitation finally arrives. With the help of a mysterious sailor, Tella whisks Scarlet away to the show. Only as soon as they arrive, Tella is kidnapped by Caravel's mastermind organizer, Legend. It turns out that this season's Caravel revolves around Tella, and whoever finds her first is the winner. Scarlet has been told that everything that happens during Caravel is only an elaborate performance, but she nevertheless becomes enmeshed in a game of love, heartbreak, and magic with the other players in the game. And whether Caravel is real or not, she must find Tella before the 5 nights of the game are over. A dangerous domino effect of consequences is set off, and her sister disappears forever. Sounds interesting. Can't wait to dive into that. The next book is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Fazal, and I've heard good things about this series as well. Excited to dive into it. It says the Zafaria is a hunter disguising herself as a man when she braves the cursed forests of Ars to feed her people. Nasir is the Prince of Death, assassinating those foolish enough to defy his autocratic father, the Sultan. If Zafaria is exposed as a girl, all of her achievements will be rejected. If Nasar displays his compassion, his father will punish him in the most brutal of ways. Both Zafaria and Nasar are legends in the kingdom of Arawaya, but neither wants to be. War is brewing, and the Ars sweeps closer with each passing day, engulfing the land in shadow. While Zafaria embarks on a quest to uncover a lost artifact that can restore magic to her suffering world and stop the Ars, Nasir is sent by the Sultan on a similar mission: retrieve the artifact and kill the hunter. But an ancient evil stirs as their journey unfolds, and the prize they seek may pose a threat greater than either can imagine. Sounds interesting. Next, I need to finally finish the Red Queen series because I have been dragging this thing out for the longest time, and it's time to be done with it. It's War Storm by Victoria Aveyard. So in this world, it's set in a world where basically your station or your class level is designated by your blood. So reds are considered to be the lower class, the working class, if you will, and they basically live to serve the silvers, who are considered more of the royal class or the elite. And what happens in this story, through a series of events, Mayor Barrow is working with the silvers, and is basically their servant. And through a series of events that happen, it's discovered that she actually has powers similar to what a silver would have. And this sets her off on this journey to basically become a silver or infiltrate the silvers, and to perpetuate this lie that she was actually born a silver and she's not truly a red, because again, this threatens their power, this threatens the whole structure of their society. And as we dig deeper into this story, Mare basically discovers that there is a secret rebellion that is going on to usurp and to overtake the Silvers so that the Reds will have their chance at living a life, a good life, a life where they can flourish and they can thrive and not be under the harsh rule of the Silvers. So that's a little bit about this series. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it's time to finish it and put it to bed. So next book that I purchased, it's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, look at how beautiful this book is. It's This Woven Kingdom by Tahira Mafi, and I have heard, again, amazing things about this series. Obviously, every book that I've seen in this series looks ridiculously beautiful. So I'm excited to dive into this. All the world, Eliza is a disposable servant, never to be known for who she really is. The long-lost heir to an ancient Jinn kingdom, she is hunted always, forced to hide in plain sight lest she expose herself to danger, until one day she makes a mistake. The crown prince, Cameron, has heard the prophecies. He knows of the fearsome monster promised to kill his king. Darkness is fast descending upon his empire, driving Cameron to desperately seek out its source. But as he grows ever more suspicious of this servant girl with strange eyes, the more he learns about her and the harder it is to turn away. Even if falling for someone like Eliza means forfeiting everything he's ever known. Can't wait to read that. Plus, it's just, again, look at this. It's so beautiful. The next book that I'm excited to read this winter is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and this is another beautiful edition. Just look at this book. It looks so flipping gorgeous. So this is a 16-year-old Decca lives in fear and anticipation of the blood ceremony that will determine whether she becomes a member of her village. Already different from everyone else because of her unnatural intuition, Decca prays for red blood so she can finally feel like she belongs. But on the day of the ceremony, her blood runs gold, the color of impurity, and Decca knows she will face a consequence worse than death. Then a mysterious woman comes to her with a choice: stay in the village and submit to her fate, or leave to fight for the emperor and an army of girls just like her. They are called Alakai, near immortals with rare gifts, and they are the only ones who can stop the empire's greatest threat. Knowing the dangers that lie ahead, yet yearning for acceptance, Decca decides to leave the only life she's ever known. But as she journeys to the capital to train for the biggest battle of her life, she discovers that the Great Wall City holds many surprises. Nothing and no one are quite what they seem to be, not even Decca herself. Again, look at how beautiful this is. The next young adult series I'm going to be starting. I have a lot of series I'm going to be starting this winter. This is wild. Anyways, this is An Ember. This is by Sabaa Tahir, An Ember in the Ashes. And so I read Air, and I didn't realize that there was an entire series, a full quartet, that happened before Air. And that basically Air is set 20 years after this quartet finishes. And I was like, I think I need to read this quartet and then reread Air so that everything makes sense and I can appreciate that story a lot better. Even though I had a good time and I really enjoyed that story, I gave it 5 fabulous stars, I still want to reread this so that I can better appreciate and understand the complexity of that story. So it says, under the Martial Empire, defiance is met with death. Leia and her family do not challenge the Empire. They see what happens to those who do. But when Leia's brother is arrested for treason, she is forced to make a decision. In exchange for help from rebels who promise to rescue her brother, she will risk her life to spy for them from within the Empire's greatest military academy. There, Leia meets Elias, the school's finest soldier, and secretly is most unwilling. He and Leia will soon realize that their destinies are intertwined and that their choices will change the fate of the Empire itself. Sounds so good. And I'm so excited about reading this. Because I've heard really good things, that this is an emotional, heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching series, and I love that. So lastly, we have another series that I'm going to be continuing on with, and it is Foxglove by Adeline Grace. I read Belladonna last month. Loved it, or not last month, I read it this month because I'm still in November. So yeah, I finished Belladonna this month. Loved it. It was such a silly, goofy time. I enjoyed every minute of it. So in Belladonna, we are following Signa as she lost her mother at a young age and became an orphan, and had a brief instance with death when she was younger, but he never took her life, and he just kind of shadowed her as she grew up. And she believes that death is her enemy and that he's out to get her, because it just so happens that every time she is placed with a family member to care for her, they mysteriously die under some strange circumstances. So she has it in her mind that death is really out to get her. But after her last person that she's staying with passes away suddenly, she is whisked away to Thorngrove to live with the Hawthorns. And upon arriving there, she discovers that the mistress of the lady of the house passed away untimely due to an illness. And it seems that the same illness is afflicting her daughter, Blythe. So Signa begins to suspect that the death of her aunt and Blythe's current illness is actually a plot, a sinister plot engaged against them to take their life for some kind of reason. She doesn't know why. So it's a race against time for her to figure out what is actually going on so that she can save her life and they can all live happily ever after. So that was interesting. I enjoyed Belladonna. Looking forward to the second book and getting more into this series. Next, we have the general fiction and literary fiction that I want to dive into this winter. The first is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I've heard very good things about this. It's very emotional, very heartbreaking, and very gut-wrenching. And again, I just love those kind of books. It says, we all have regrets, choices we could have made differently, paths we didn't take, other lives we might have led. But what if you were given a chance to fix your past? Enter the Midnight Library. Nora's life has been going from bad to worse. Then, at the stroke of midnight, on her last day on Earth, she finds herself transported to the Midnight Library, where each book contains an alternate life, a possible world in which she made different choices. She is given what seems like the ultimate opportunity, a chance to undo her regrets and try out each of the other lives she might have lived. But things aren't always what she imagined they'd be, and soon her choices place the library and herself in extreme danger. Before time runs out, she must answer the ultimate question. With infinite choices, what is the best way to live? This sounds very intriguing. This book that I want to read this winter is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. And with this book, it says, a captivating love story that is also a clear-eyed look at the effects of injustice in contemporary American life. Tayari Jones's novel gorgeously chronicles three people who are bound together and separated by forces beyond their control. As newlyweds, Celestial and Roy are living the American dream. He is a young executive and she is an artist on the brink of an exciting career. But after Roy's incarceration for a crime he did not commit, Celestial, bereft and unmoored, turns to a childhood friend and Roy's best man, Andre, for support. As Roy's absence drags on, Celestial faces soul-wrenching decisions about balancing loyalty with independence, desire with social and familial expectations, and what is right with what is fair, and to whom. So, this sounds like it's going to be a very interesting and kind of like, I don't know, like thought-provoking and just really like, I don't know, like a really, I can't think of the word, but it sounds really good. I can't wait to read it. Next book on my winter TBR is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It says, on a bitter cold day in the December of his junior year at Harvard, Sam Masser exits a subway car and sees, amid the hordes of people waiting on the platform, Sadie Green. He calls her name for a minute. She pretends she hasn't heard him. But then she turns and a game begins, a legendary collaboration that will launch them to stardom. These friends, intimates since childhood, borrow money to beg favors. And before even graduating college, they have created their first blockbuster, Ishigo. Overnight, the world is theirs, spanning 30 years from Cambridge to Venice Beach. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is a dazzling novel that examines the multifarious nature of identity, disability, failure, the redemptive possibilities in play, and above all, our need to connect, to be loved, and to love. This sounds good. The next book that I can't wait to dive into this winter is This Motherless Land by Nikki May. This has been a really popular book, and I really can't wait to dig into this and tear up this story. It says, Quiet Funke is happy in Nigeria. She loves her art teacher, mother, her professor, father, and even her annoying little brother, most of the time. But when tragedy strikes, she's sent to England, a place she knows only from her mother's stories. To her dismay, she finds a much-lauded estate dilapidated, the food tasteless, the weather gray. Worse still, her mother's family are cold and distant, with one exception, her cousin Liv. Free-spirited Liv has always wanted to break free of her joyless family. She becomes fiercely protective of her little cousin, and her warmth and kindness give Funke a place to heal. The two girls grow into adulthood and the closest of friends, but the choices their mothers made haunt Funke and Liv. And when a second tragedy occurs, their friendship is torn apart. Against a long shadow of their shared family history, each woman will struggle to chart a path forward, separated by country, misunderstanding, and ambition. This sounds so good. I can't wait to read it. I love books like this. Like this is why fiction is one of my favorite genres, because of just compelling books like this. It sounds so good. Next book that I am looking forward to reading this winter is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm a huge Elizabeth Gilbert fan. I loved Eat, Pray, Love. I love Big Magic. She's just an amazing writer. And unfortunately, I have not read enough of her works. So can't wait to dive into this. It says 19-year-old Vivian Morris has just been kicked out of Vassar College in 1940, owing to her lackluster freshman year performance. Her affluent parents send her to Manhattan to live with her Aunt Peg, who owns a flamboyant theater. There, Vivian is introduced to an entire cosmos of unconventional and charismatic characters. But when Vivian makes a personal mistake that results in a professional scandal, it will lead her to a new understanding of the kind of life she craves and the kind of freedom it takes to pursue it. It will also lead to the love of her life. Now 89 and telling her story at last, Vivian recalls how the events of those years altered the course of her life. Sounds book that I can't wait to read this winter is Pictures of You by Emma Gray. Now I read Emma Gray's other book, The Last Love Note, and it was such a beautiful exploration of grief and just finding your way after losing a spouse to an extreme disease and having to basically watch them waste away over time, and then realizing it's time to move forward with your life and the awkwardness, the guilt that comes with that. It was such a beautiful story. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And I'm looking forward to reading this because if her writing and her storytelling ability is half of what it was in The Last Love Note, this is going to be a knockout. So it says Evie Hudson should be grieving her dead husband, but since the car crash that claimed his life and landed her in the hospital, she can't remember him at all. The only person who can help her piece her past together is her high school best friend, Drew Kennedy. When snippets of her memory start falling into place, Evie wonders exactly how she ended up in a life that couldn't be further from the one she dreamed of. This time around, she's seeing all the things she missed and the life she gets to choose again. This sounds so good. I can't wait to read it. Okay, next genre that I'm gonna be reading for, it's not that many. It's just basic young adult fiction. And the first book that I'm looking forward to reading is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. And I read Better Than the Movies before, and it's about Liz and Wes and their discovery or their journey into a little romance, as Liz is basically thinking that she's so in love with this guy and thinking he's the perfect guy for her, and she's trying to create a version of herself that he would accept, that he would like, that he would love. And Wes is helping her to do that by fake dating her so that he becomes interested in her and, pursues her. But along the way, she begins to realize and define that maybe all that she thinks about this guy and him being the perfect guy is not exactly what she wants. And what she wants may be the guy that she's fake dating who is fitting the bill and who is actually making her happy and understanding her and sees her. So it was an amazing story. I loved it. And I'm not, I don't want to say I'm not excited about this. I'm kind of like, wasn't expecting this because I thought that it ended perfectly. And now we have like a part 2. So I'm kind of curious as to like what happened after the completion of that story. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this so that I can figure out what exactly happens and see the continuation of their love story. So there's that. What I have is Before I Let Go by Mariaki Nijamp. I don't know if I said that wrong. If I did, correct me. But this story says, Corey and Kyra didn't fit in with anyone else in their small Alaskan town, but they fit together. So when Corey's family has to move away, she makes Kyra promise to stay strong during the long, dark winter to wait for her return. Except days before Corey is set to visit, Kyra dies. Corey is devastated and confused. The entire community speaks in hushed tones about the town's lost daughter, saying her death was meant to be, and they push Corey away like she's a stranger. Corey knows something is wrong. The town of Lost is keeping secrets, chilling secrets that will lead to a difficult truth Corey never saw coming. Oh God, I didn't read the synopsis of this when I bought it. I just picked it up and like took it. And this sounds like it's gonna be really sad. So we'll see. The next book that I have is One of Us is Back by Karen M. McManus. I cannot wait to finish this series as well because it has been long overdue. And this is about the Bayview 5? I think it was the Bayview 5, where they went to detention and one of the students that was in detention with them unexpectedly dies. And they found out that his death was actually foul play and that they're under suspicion for contributing or causing his death or murdering him basically. And all the things that kind of fall out from that. And this is a continuation of the series. It wraps everything up and I can't wait to read it. So I did a horrible job explaining that, but it's really good. It sounds better than what I explained it. I just can't remember all the intricacies because I think each of these books, they kind of cover different things, but at the same time, they're kind of interconnected. And this is like culminating everything from the first book and the second book. And I don't want to give anything away in case you haven't read it and you're interested. So I'm being really vague and I'm describing this really horribly, but it's really good. And I also have a historical fiction that I'm looking to reading, and this is the only historical fiction that I have. But again, this might not be all because again, the library holds are coming through. I'm gonna be reading a lot of historical fiction, but this is just the only one that I own so far. And this is Kristen Hanna's Firefly Lane. Now I know this is not necessarily her most popular book. I've heard everyone talk about The Four Winds, or what's the other one? The Nightingale, The Women. They are the ones that people talk about, like, you need to read these books by Kristen Hanna because they're amazing. Oh, and The Great Alone. But I was like, I'm just gonna start with this one because I remember this being a Netflix series. And I was like, I want to read this and watch the series and just see how it is. And yeah, and then I can dive into those always. So this says, spanning more than 3 decades and playing out across the ever-changing face of the Pacific Northwest, Firefly Lane is an internationally best-selling story of 2 women and the friendship that defines their lives. This exceptional novel has struck a chord in women around the world. In a way, it is a story of all women, of who we are and what we care about and how much friendship matters. In the turbulent summer of 1974, Kate Malarkey has accepted her place at the bottom of the 8th grade social food chain. Then, to her amazement, the coolest girl in the world moves in across the street and wants to be her friend. Tully Hart seems to have it all: beauty, brains, ambition. On the surface, they are as opposite as 2 people can be. Kate, doomed to be forever uncool, with a loving family who mortifies her at every turn. Tully, steeped in glamour and mystery, with a secret that is destroying her. They make a pact to be best friends forever. By summer's end, they've become Tully and Kate, inseparable. For 30 years, Tully and Kate are there for each other, weathering the storms of friendship. Jealousy, anger, hurt, resentment. They think they survived it all until an unexpected betrayal tears them apart and puts their courage and friendship to the ultimate test. I love books and stories about the intricacies and the different levels and the different stages and phases of female friendship. And this sounds so, so good. Cannot wait to read it. So the next category that I have that I'm looking forward to reading from this winter is going to be my mystery thriller category. The first book that I want to dive into is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. This I was supposed to read like forever ago, but I never got around to it because holes came through in the library, shifted my TBR around a little bit, and yeah, I just never got to read this. But I still want to read it, still interested in it, so yeah. So before Owen Michaels disappears, he smuggles a note to his beloved wife of 1 year. Protect her. Despite her confusion and fear, Hannah Hall knows exactly to whom the note refers. Owen's 16-year-old daughter, Bailey. Bailey, who lost her mother tragically as a child. Bailey, who wants absolutely nothing to do with her new stepmother. As Hannah's increasingly desperate calls to Owen go unanswered, as the FBI arrests Owen's boss, as a U.S. Marshal and federal agents arrive at her Sausalito home unannounced, Hannah quickly realizes her husband isn't who he said he was, and that Bailey just may hold the key to figuring out Owen's true identity and why he really disappeared. Hannah and Bailey set out to discover the truth, but as they start putting together the pieces of Owen's past, they soon realize they're also building a new future, one neither of them could have anticipated. This sounds intriguing. Book is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. Again, I was supposed to read this over the fall, and just craziness with the TBR, just a TBR shakeup, and I didn't get to it, but I still want to read it. So it says, Shelby Tebow is the first to go missing. Then Meredith Dickey and her 6-year-old daughter Delilah vanished just blocks away from where Shelby was last seen, striking fear into their once peaceful community. After an elusive search that yields more questions than answers, the case eventually goes cold. Now, 11 years later, Delilah shockingly returns. Everyone wants to know what happened to her, but no one is prepared for what they'll find. And some people will stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. This sounds so good. I love Mary Kubica. She is just so masterful when it comes to domestic thrillers, in my opinion, in the way that she structures them, in the way that she tells them. They're not necessarily fast-paced. They're a little bit more of a slow burn, but they're super impactful and twisty, so I can't wait to read this. Next book I have is Tell Me Lies by Carola Lovering. And this is another popular book. It has a adaptation on Hulu, and I don't know, I like reading books and then watching the adaptations and picking them apart. That's just my thing. So it says Lucy Albright is eager for a fresh start when she arrives at her small California college and immediately embraces all that college life has to offer. New friends, wild parties, stimulating classes. And then she meets Stephen DeMarco. Charming, attractive, complicated, devastating. Confident and cocksure, Stephen sees something in Lucy that no one else has seen, and she's quickly seduced by the sense of possibility that his attention brings her. Meanwhile, Stephen is determined to forget an incident buried in his past that, if exposed, could ruin him, and his single-minded drive for success extends to winning and keeping Lucy's heart. Lucy knows there's something about Stephen and that isn't to be trusted. Stephen knows Lucy can't tear herself away, and their addicting entanglement will have consequences they never could have imagined. Sounds interesting. Next book I have is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. I wanted to read this book a long time ago, never got the chance to pick it up, saw it in a bookstore by chance, grabbed it immediately, and here we are. So it says a successful film professor and podcaster, Bodie Kane, is content to forget her past, the family tragedy that marred her adolescence, her 4 largely miserable years at New Hampshire boarding school, and the murder of her former roommate, Talia Keith. Though the circumstances surrounding Talia's death and the conviction of the school's athletic trainer, Omar Evans, are hotly debated online, Bodie needs to let sleeping dogs lie. But when the Granby School invites her back to teach a course, Bodie is inexorably drawn to the case and its increasingly apparent flaws. In their rush to convict Omar, did the school and the police overlook other suspects? Is the real killer still out there? As she falls down the very rabbit hole she was so determined to avoid, Bodie begins to wonder if she wasn't as much of an outsider at Granby as she thought, and if she, in fact, might hold the key to solving the case. Sounds interesting. The book that I want to read this winter is The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. I picked this up by chance at Target, I think, and like, I don't know, we'll see. A decade ago, two vans filled with high school seniors on a school service trip crashed into a Tennessee ravine. Only 9 survived. A year later, after one of the survivors dies by suicide on the anniversary of the crash, the rest of them make a pact to come together each year to commemorate that terrible night. But by the 10th anniversary, Cassidy Bent has distanced herself from the tragedy. This year, she is determined to finally break ties with the group once and for all. But when Cassidy receives an anonymous text with the obituary of another survivor, she finds herself going to the reunion once more. Tensions immediately run high, and with a storm approaching, the group finds itself facing the threat of closed roads and surging waters. Again. When another survivor suddenly disappears, Cassidy begins to wonder if something stronger than survivor's guilt has drawn them back together. It sounds pretty interesting. I don't know. Should be good. We'll see. I have to this winter TBR is The Last One at the Wedding by Jason Ruckalak. So this one says, it's been 3 years since Frank Sistowski last heard from his daughter, and he's devastated by their long, unhappy estrangement. But then an unexpected phone call from Maggie changes everything. She says she's getting married, and she wants her father to walk her down the aisle. Frank is overjoyed by the news. Here at last is a chance for reconciliation, a perfect opportunity to repair their fractured relationship. But a disturbing discovery about his future son-in-law leads Frank to wonder if Maggie is making a terrible mistake. And once he arrives at the wedding, an extravagant 3-day affair set at a luxurious lakefront estate, the warning signs keep piling up. Can Frank unravel the truth about Maggie's fiancé before it's too late? Sounds interesting. Had a good time with his last book, Hidden Pictures, so I'm predicting I'll have a good time with this one. Last book in the mystery thriller genre that I want to read this winter is Sally Hepworth's The Soulmate. So picture a lovely cottage on a cliff with sloping lawns, walking paths, and beautiful flowers. It's Gabe and Pippa Gerard's dream home in a sleepy coastal town, but their perfect house hides something sinister. The tall cliffs have become a popular spot for people to end their lives. Over the past several months, Gabe comes to their rescue, literally taking them off the ledge until one day he doesn't. When Pippa discovers Gabe knew the victim, the questions spiral. Did the victim jump? Was she pushed? And would Gabe, the love of Pippa's life, her soulmate, lie? As the perfect facade of their marriage begins to crack, the deepest and darkest secrets begin to unravel. Because sometimes the most convincing lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Ooh, that sounds good. So, looking for. And the last and final category that I want to, in the books that I want to read from that category, is the nonfiction. And the first is Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And this is about at least 1/3 of the people we know are introverts. They are the ones who prefer listening to speaking, who innovate and create but dislike self-promotion, who favor working on their own over working in teams. It is to introverts, Rosa Parks, Chopin Dr. Seuss, Steve Wozniak, that we owe many of the great contributions to society. In Quiet, Susan Cain argues that we dramatically undervalue introverts and shows how much we lose in doing so. She charts the rise of the extrovert ideal throughout the 20th century and explores how deeply it has come to permeate our culture. She also introduces us to successful introverts, from a witty, high-octane public speaker who recharges in solitude after he talks, to a record-breaking salesman who quietly taps into the power of questions. Passionately argued, superbly researched, and filled with indelible stories of real people, Quiet has the power to permanently change how we see introverts and, equally important, how they see themselves. Can't wait to read this. As you know, I'm an introvert, so can't wait. The last and final book, I won't say the final book on TBR because there are some ones on my Kindle Unlimited that I can't wait to read this winter as well. But the last physical book to my winter TBR is Lisa Turkhurst's Good Boundaries and Goodbyes. Is it unloving or selfish to set a boundary? Are Christians ever called to walk away from a relationship that's no longer safe or sustainable? Lisa Turkhurst has asked these hard questions in the midst of her own relational struggles. But after thousands of hours of counseling intensives and extensive theological research that transform the way she defines healthy relationships, Lisa is now more committed than ever to loving people well without losing the best of who she is. She wants to help you do the same. In these pages, Lisa will help you understand the 5 factors to remember when implementing healthy boundaries, determine the appropriate amount of personal and emotional access someone has to you based on how responsible they'll be with that access, stop being misled and emotionally paralyzed by wrongly interpreted or weaponized scriptures that perpetuate unhealthy dynamics and difficult relationships, overcome the frustrating cycle of ineffective boundary setting with realistic scripts and practical strategies to help you communicate, keep, and implement healthier patterns. Be equipped to say goodbye with guilt when a relationship has shifted from difficult to destructive and is no longer sustainable. Revive therapeutic wisdom you can trust directly from Lisa's Christian counselor, Jim Kress, who weighs in throughout the book. So this sounds very interesting as a reformed people pleaser who continually needs help building and creating healthy boundaries. Can't wait to dive into this one. That's all of the physical books that I want to read in this winter, which winter is like only 3 freaking months. So we'll see how this turns out. So let me know in the comments below what books you can't wait to read this winter. And until next time, have a great day and see you in the next video. Bye.